Good morning. It is October 27th, 2025. Welcome to Collision Coffee Talk. Super excited. Got Halloween at the end of this week, so lots of fun things to do. And so I have a really fun episode planned because not a lot happened over the last week. I was involved in a class for 3 days, so we had our PRI class for 3 days. So that kind of, when I'm having a class, it sort of takes me out of and returning my emails, participating in anything, and lots of that. But we also have the sort of the year-end industry event coming up, and so things will be a little quiet until we get to that. So I just decided we're going to talk about some things that really, really make me angry, some things that frustrate me, people that frustrate me, and then some things that really do make me laugh. So should be a very interesting episode. Let me get everything ready to go. This is definitely one that you're going to want to probably check out. If you're listening on the audio, that's great. Probably going to want to check out the video version of this because we have a lot of things to share and show. And we got a video we're going to show too. So lots to talk about. All right, Carlyle Group has issued a credit warning. We talked about they've purchased like a 60% stake, or I'm going to get my percentages off. It's like a stake, the stake of BASF to become the majority of that, which they had previously, but they have divested all of their interest. But they were previously, they were the originals for Axalta when Axalta had to spin off from DuPont and actually become Axalta, and then Service King as well. So they have divested several years ago all of their interest in both Axalta and Service King. So they got out of Service King before it dived. Um, but so I found it interesting when an investment firm like Carlyle Group issues some credit warnings and some things, and we'll talk about why. Some of that is interesting in some of the emails and messages I was getting last week as Carlyle was making these statements. We're going to talk about the trucking industry, the Waffle House, and the collision industry. I love this one, and the parallels that are there, which is really great. We will review the paragraph language in State Farm's new select service agreement. So I got a lot of questions from people when I was talking about potential vendors, more than just I would say ADAS vendors going and making agreements with insurance companies. But now we have paint companies, we have parts, OEs, we have all these things. And so, what specifically sort of changed or updated in that State Farm Select Service Agreement? I'm going to show that paragraph language. I got a lot of questions about it. Fine, I'll just share it. Why is everybody mad at Coffee Talk? So, about this, it's every year when it comes time for the really big end of the year show. I either get phone calls or emails, or people call me and tell me things that other people. And so I'm just going to talk about why everybody gets mad at Collision Hub and specifically the Coffee Talk show, which I think is hilarious. Um, the insurers are starting to use ChatGPT as their attorney, and it is creating some hilarious decisions from judges. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to discuss bot accounts on social media, what they are, how to recognize them, and why they exist. Like, what's their real purpose for these bot accounts that you're seeing out there? Guerrilla marketing and collision. We have a great new C20 group led by Tom, who's talking about marketing for small independent collision repairers or even dealerships. But how do you market yourself? Specifically in an economic downturn or in a consolidation prone industry. So, how can we be the small mom and pop hardware store and go against the Home Depot, or be the grocery store and go against the Walmart? So, a little bit of that. OE subscriptions, are they promises or are they lies, specifically as it relates to our industry? State of Iowa has crossed a big line, and it will be very interesting to see how this plays out. And body shops should be worried. Now, we've asked for some clarification. I don't expect we're going to get it. It's going to take some more legal action in the state. There is a new intense rise of negative supplements across the industry. So we'll talk about negative supplements. And Rivian has entered into new layoffs. So the whole EV thing as we end of federal credits. And we look at what, GM just announced they were taking billions of losses that they would be sort of absorbing over the next matter. So let's talk about the fun one off the top, the Carlyle Group. So there was a meeting, I guess we'll call it a meeting, in which Carlisle's CEO was basically talking and addressing the financial sides of the press. We'll just say that. So this was in Bloomberg. There's several other places that you can go and cover this, what the CEO had to say. But basically, um, the credit, so I mean, I don't think there's any debate that we are probably in a recession. We've talked, maybe it was a couple of weeks ago, we talked with about what Yanni had posted online about this is the quietest recession he can ever really remember. If we go back to 7 and 8, it was very vocal. We were all aware that there were huge, massive problems with the economy. And this one seems to be lots of different people sort of covering it. I've seen lots of people, even in our industry lately, giving presentations about this rebound of the collision industry and claims that are supposed to happen miraculously in the first quarter, that there's not a single stitch of data that supports that. So that's really interesting to feel like why we have to like sort of be more hush hush about it than we have been in the past. But the Carlyle Group was talking about sort of how the current credit market is declining, and that's sort of a worry for economists when you put that on there, and that's typically when I not necessarily. It changes the way companies will do business. It changes the way that they'll either make funds available or not make funds. Some people will pull back as the credit rating goes back. They don't want to risk that much, and then some people will kind of see it like a pirates market where it's a great time to jump in and take advantage of that and the terms and everything that come in. There's some great history around some of the biggest um, billionaires of American history, whether you want to go to the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, or whatever, that they were families that took advantage of economic crises were where they made their greatest gains. And so kind of the both of the sides. But so I had a lot of financial people calling me over the last week and different people giving me backgrounds and advice on what they thought this means. It's not my expertise. I'm not a financial planner, advisor, market person. That's not what I do. But I thought I would share. I thought it was worth sharing some of the things that people had said to me so that at least it's out there in the open. I think sometimes we're better if the more that people talk about things, the better we are and what goes to it. And I recently had saw some very interesting things that had popped up on Google that sort of made me chuckle about the way that people treat coffee talk. So I'm going to talk about it. All right. So when I was asking these people, well, what's this credit thing and why is Carlisle talking about it? Got you guys so worked up into a sort of like frothing at the mouth and giggling because you're so excited. Break it down to me. So just in general, what they had said is that a credit market volatility. So the credit market is sort of in its warning list and it's going down. It has a significant threat to companies that have a high debt to equity ratio. So if the credit industry or the credit market is suffering, if you're a business that has a high debt equity or a high debt ratio compared to what you actually have in liquidity or equity or whatever, that this isn't a good thing for you, that the market taking that can be really bad. It increases the borrowing cost. So now if you have to go back, let's say you need to go get more money and you're looking for someone to sort of infuse more money in you so that you think maybe you want to ride out a current economic downturn, that the cost of borrowing that money is going to be greater, which means it will raise your risk of financial distress or your ability to pay that back. And it makes sense, right? A credit card at 30% versus a credit card at 2%. So for those of us that our debt ratio is like, I got 15 grand to somebody on my car. We're not talking about the millions and millions that some of these businesses own. But that makes sense, right? When the market suffers, like the housing market, right? Interest rates and everything went up. These companies that have these high debt ratios are going to have to possibly seek additional funds, and it's going to be at a higher rate, which then gives them more financial distress or risk of folding on said debts, like Service King. So just that was the interesting connection there. These companies rely heavily on debt to fund their operations and growth, and it makes them particularly vulnerable to market instability. So here's where we're at. When you have companies that are not necessarily making more than they're spending, or they're not making enough to pay their bills plus pay back their debts, so to speak. And they've continued on what may seem like unintelligent growth. Like, if we're not making any money now, why would we just keep growing and buying more things that are not going to make us any more money? That you get real vulnerable. Like the slightest little thing. We talked about that back in the summer when Moody's had downgraded Crash Champion's financial status. And one of the things that somebody sent me was like, hey, sort of their response to the downgrading was like, no, no, no. Moody's came back and said that they thought that our credit was going to be pretty good. Well, that was August, and now here we are as we get to the end of the year, fourth quarter, and you have Carlyle Group saying that our debt market, that credit market is not in a good place. And so if you were sort of hinging your bets come August or in August about Moody's, or July when we got the story in August, but if you were sort of hinging your bets there that this was going to be okay, well, now we have another instance where it's not going to be okay. And that's that market instability. So the slightest things, whether that's a claims downturn, we don't have enough cars in the market to fix anymore, or you have insurers drastically controlling the market, suppressing rates, suppressing hours, labor lines, just everything that you can think of that they're doing. When you have something like that that changes even the smallest amount of profitability in a market, it can have dramatic effects on people that are super vulnerable. And some of the things that we look at for Crash Champions that was also shared with us is, we go back and you think about they have financial stress due to aggressive expansion. So you've had this debt ratio that has continued to loom, but you've continued to grow and buy new stores, and sort of said, but look, our sales are growing. And we talked about that. Like, your sales aren't really growing if you're buying sales. So it's not like I have 50 stores and those 50 stores made $10 million dollars, and I worked really hard to decrease cost, increase productivity, do all that. And those stores now make $15 million dollars, and I've added $5 million in sales. You go and buy four more stores, and now 14 stores have added 5 million in sales. And that's a completely different story. If you're just looking at numbers, it sounds great. You can have stories of, we've had 300% EBITDA growth, or whatever. And it's like, have you really grown, or have you just bought more? Like that doesn't count as growth to me. So growth to me is, I fixed what was wrong. We're now making more money out of the footprint we own. Therefore, we should add. But due to aggressive expansion and high leverage, as evidence, so this was in a repair-driven news story. So I didn't. This isn't a Kristen made it up. This is Kristen grabbed it out of a story. As evidenced by credit rating downgrades and an increased default risk between late 2022 and early 2024. While recent data shows some stabilization in credit ratings, so this was back several months ago, the high risk of default and continued leverage remain concerns. And so now here we get to this thing from Carlyle talking about the credit market, the debt market is really super changing, and that has a direct relation to us when it comes to our large MSO operations, that as they continue to grow and try to borrow more money to buy more stores, that debt ratio for them raises, and then that volatility of that market and everything. So something to keep an eye on. Carlisle Group, I think out of everybody that gives an opinion on this, the people that were reaching out to us were probably right. Their take on it is more relevant to us than probably a lot of take on the market, because they're in our market and they've just sort of re-entered it. They've been out of it for a while and they've just sort of re-entered it with BASF. But and that deal sounds like it was a really great deal based on what they're saying now, because there really wasn't debt there with BASF. So that was really good. So but very interesting turns, and things to think about when you look at different areas of the market and what the long-term effects of that may be on a big chunk of our industry, and it's not just, they're probably not the only MSO group that's growing and trying to do things. They're just the one that we get stories and financial reportings on. So there's that, which led to, while we were having all of these talks this. Um, over the last week about people reaching out to me to discuss those things. There was also the group of people that, as we get closer to a big industry event, that reach out to me to complain about various things around Collision Hub or um, to ask for advice, but want it to be secret. Like it publicly, they would probably tell people they don't know me, and then privately they call me and want favors. But I get tickled at the people that want to give me career advice about how I make a lot of people angry and people talk about you all the time. And I go, that's kind of the point of having a media channel is that people should be talking about it. At one particular person during our conversation made a comment about there are some OEs that won't participate on panels at certain events because they're afraid they'll end up on Coffee Talk. To which I'm great. I think that's wonderful that there's people that are actually afraid of accountability. They're afraid of a media outlet that they can't control, that it's not a matter of sending out a press release or telling a magazine, hey, if you cover that story, I'm not going to buy any ads in your magazine for the next year, which most editors or publishers would then call that particular stringer and say, hey, don't run that article. Don't say that. Don't do that. Pull that story because we need the advertising dollars more than the industry needs to know the information that's out there. So why is everybody getting super mad at Coffee Talk, and why is it suddenly corporations, vendors, different manufacturers, everybody having such a tissy? And the thing about it is, and here's what I always like to say, people can't complain about something that nobody's listening to or watching. So the more audience you get, the more important. So when you have, I mean, I think about all the people in the industry that are around this industry that make content or do things, and nobody complains about because no one's watching it. Basically, they'll go 6 months and maybe put 200 views on something. So I thought we would just take a little peek about where we're at. So on LinkedIn lately, I thought this was kind of funny because it's been years. I mean, we're 16 years into producing Collision Hub content, which means I'm 16 years into people being angry and upset. It's nothing new. It's just this particular morning, every Monday morning podcast has everybody in a new tizzy. So what are we at? This is basically 1 week on a platform. So what kind of views are we talking about? What kind of engagement are we talking about? It wasn't a good week. So when I pulled up the numbers this morning, we're down. So I will show my victories as well as I will show my defeats. Views on our content, 848,000 within the week. It generates 426 new follows. And that's down typically on our growth. And I'll show you 114 people over last week unfollowed Collision Hub. And we got 312 new follows. So for the net there. So there are people every week that decide that they don't want to follow or see content. What's really interesting is a lot of people think that you have to, so people will like it, so you get credit and you can say there's 52,000 people that like this page. And then there's people that'll just follow. Like, I don't want to give you a like. I don't want to be listed in the likes section. I don't want people to be able to click the page and see that my name's there as a like, but I'll click the follow so that I can just watch what you're posting. Yeah, that stuff's tracked too, which is kind of interesting the way social media does it. And then what does that look like? Well, that content represents 190,000 individual users within whatever. I mean, we don't know what they are. They can be consumers, they could be vendors, they could be body shops, they could be whatever. But that's 190,000 individuals consume the content each week. That's a big grab. That's more than what's going to be at SEMA. So if we think about who's going to be at the SEMA show next week, as that unfolds, I will hit more people in a week than that entire show will hit. And that's not just talking about the collision repair industry. That would be like the whole attendance of SEMA show. Like I'm going to get more people in a week to look at the content on the Collision Hub pages, outlets, etc., then bodies will be in that show over the next course of the week. And that's a big number. And when you get those big numbers, then that means more people are talking about things. And then the more people talk about things, that's either really good for you if you like what's being said, or it's really bad if you don't like what's being said. There's always two sides to every story. You got to have a right and a left so that you can have a middle. But we just don't have a lot of what's talking about where we really are. And this is as we go into this and people are preparing to go to Vegas. I'll have a pre-SEMA show next Monday for everybody. But as everybody's preparing to go to Vegas, I think we really have to take an objectionable look at what we have done to this industry over the last 30 years. Um, there's a lot of people that want to keep things the same. They want to, and they'll tell you they're for change and whatever, but they really want this industry to operate the exact same way it has over the last 30 years, whether that's associations that want to tell you that they are the representatives of the repairers or they're the representatives of insurers or whatever, and they want to tell you that they speak for these people. They've had 30 years to speak, and we're not getting any better. I got some emails last week from some technicians. I've got techs that work at, we're talking about the board members of these associations. These are supposed to be the industry leaders. These are supposed to be the people you're supposed to listen to, and you're not supposed to listen to me, or you're not supposed to listen to a hundred other people in this industry, right? You're only supposed, these are the only people that you're supposed to listen to. Those people are laying people off. So they don't have any work. They're not making record profit. They're not doing good. So why do we still want to do it that way? I've got MSOs that are laying people off right now. A lot of people in higher management and some what I would call fringe territories, and those are going to be the territories where there's way too many stores in a market. And it's time to thin that out because claim clap counts are down. We have manufacturers and vendors that are just cutting deals behind a jobber's back or behind the body shop's back. People that want to go straight to insurance companies, which is why we're going to talk about State Farm. Um, and that's negatively affecting you as body shops in your profitability, whether it's you bought a cabinet system that's supposed to be full of one party's product and you're supposed to be creating invoices and you got the insurer sending you, screenshots of Amazon telling you we ain't paying for what's on your invoice. Like we got real problems. I feel like, what was that? Forget that movie. Or American President. We have real problems, Bob, and we need real solutions to that. But our costs are exploding and our margins are shrinking at a rapid pace that I've not seen. I've only got, I'm kind of got born into this industry, but I only have my frame of reference. Um, but I never thought I would see a day where an insurer would go into a market and roll rates back $20 an hour. You were getting $70 an hour last year, and this year they only want to pay you 50. When you think about everything that's going on, it is insane. It's time we stopped having conversations that make everybody feel comfortable in the room. I'm okay if the insurers are uncomfortable and want to leave. I'm okay if the MSOs are uncomfortable and want to leave. I'm okay if the software companies are uncomfortable and want to leave the room. But we have got to figure out what we're doing because the way we've done it for the last 30 years isn't getting the job done. When our trade press is held hostage with advertising dollars, or you can't make this person mad, or I'm going to kick you out of this event, and you can't do this, then the body shops don't get real information, and you guys can't make real decisions because then what's brought to you, even locally, is filtered through a lot of different things. So people are mad at Coffee Talk because you're watching it and you're listening to it. And you don't have to agree with me. I am perfectly fine if you listen every Monday because you want to know what you're going to tell everybody I'm wrong about. That's fantastic dialogue to have. But we can't have conversations in which everybody's trying to be nice because that nicety is leading to closures. And it's closing the people that have been trying to be the gatekeepers to the voice of the industry. So those people that have tried to like sit on top of it. What's that? George Strait movies. I watch a lot of movies. Um, the one with George Strait. The funny thing about the white speck on the top of chicken shit is that's chicken shit too. So we got a lot of white specks and sports coats sitting on top of the pile, trying to sort of pretend that they've got this all covered and they know what's going on and they know what's best for you. And their businesses are suffering. They're laying off people. They're not making what they used to make. It's okay to be angry and mad and frustrated. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to question everything that is put in front of you. Disruptors are what make change. Our country was built on disruptors. So I think it's kind of funny. So everybody, please stop calling me and telling me what so and so has said or what you think I should do better to be nicer so that people would like me. I'm okay not being liked. Larry is okay. He's always been okay with not being liked. But we've got to have a discussion. But the reason people are so angry is because you're listening and watching. So it's hard to imagine that on some weeks I will hit that thing and there will be a million views within a certain week, and I'll post that kind of on LinkedIn and take a victory lap. People can't talk about what they don't see. People can't talk about what they don't hear. And that's everything in that industry, from new products to new, potential solutions and workflow to dealing with insurance companies to whatever. People can't talk about what they don't hear or what they don't see. And we're definitely hitting the numbers. And so I'm okay being hated. I'm okay. I had one particular jobber tell me that I can't come and speak. They previously wanted a book to speak. I can't come and speak because one of their one of the companies of which they distribute a product told them that they would change their discounts and their rates if they let me speak. And so they were like, "We're real sorry, Kristen, we can't do it." I'm like, "Dude, it doesn't affect me. I'm fine. I don't need to come, fly to wherever to do a presentation." But the question would be, why would somebody not want shots to hear a different voice to theirs or whatever? So that I thought that was interesting. If I didn't have any views, no one would give a poop about what about what I was saying. So just like I get sent videos and links all the time from things that people are posting, and there's like 50 views on it. I'm like, why do I care about something or somebody that's getting 50 views? All right, so let's talk about views and what that is in the world of social media, because there's a lot of things that get reshared or they get screenshotted and sent to me, and people go, "Can you believe this, Kristen?" Or "You should include this or talk about it on Coffee Talk," or whatever. And then I kind of have to chuckle. So if you look online lately, you will see generally it's the same people or the same type of accounts or same general account. We'll say, car repair, or this person has a name, or, this one over here is VK Auto Center or whatever. And they post rapidly and frequently throughout a day. It always seems to be things that are so outrageous that you're like, that's not even close to remotely being true. It's intended to grab you, ask your opinions. I think I'm being ripped off, or I got overcharged here, or this new one here. She seems to be making always direct post about collision repair centers. This one was the body shop. I spotted the body shop driving my car, and they look really real. Like you look at it and go, "Oh, that looks like somebody took their finger on a, edited the photo on their phone and took their finger and encircled it or whatever." These are bot accounts. Bot accounts do lots of different things. They're engagement farmers. They want to create or post something that makes you feel like you, as an expert or someone with experience in the industry or in subject matter, feels like you have to tell somebody the right way, or that's not right, or you should do that, or you should do these things. There's a couple of different things that happen with those. Sometimes people do that to gain following, to gain views, to gain traction. You've probably noticed, even if you haven't liked or commented, if you've paused in your scrolling to read it, the algorithm says you must have liked that. I'm going to show you more of that so that you have more opportunities to like or follow or engage with that account. So you don't always have to click on something to give it credit. Sometimes just slowing down. So you'll notice you slow, and then suddenly like your feed seems overran with these people that are on it. These farm accounts sometimes can be individual, like companies, individuals, engagement farming, to which they grow a following, and then they'll use that following to shift to either sell you something, or suddenly it changes the name of the account and it's something you didn't even think you were following before or whatever. Sometimes, right now, in the world of digital marketing and advertising, cultivating um, a demographic is harder these days than it used to be. People used to would share a lot of information when they built their profiles, where they work, all these kind of things. And a lot of people feel like, "Oh, I want to protect my privacy," like they think they can, which kind of cracks me up. So they use engagement to figure out where you would fit in a demographic pool. So if Collision Hub wanted to go online and buy a bunch of advertising, and I only wanted to target people that were interested or involved in the collision repair industry, well, how do I find those people if they haven't like indicated that on their account? So, building a Facebook profile is not necessarily like a dating app where you go, I like dogs and I don't like cats, and when it starts to determine who you are and what bucket to put you in based on where you put your engagement. So if you maybe join a group or you interact with certain content, then they'll go, well, that person must be interested. So now when I go online and I go, well, I want to run an ad and I want to pay $1,000 and I want to hit people that are interested in the collision repair industry, they get better at showing those ads to people. It's easy for big market, like you like Nike shoes or you like Adidas or whatever. When you start thinking about auto repair, um, yeah, fence building, like little things that are more niche type stuff that people want to advertise in, where to find those. So every social media platform from TikTok to Instagram to Twitter to whatever, or X, I guess I can't call it Twitter anymore, seeks to try to find the best demographics to get advertisers the best results so that that money keeps flowing in. So just keep in mind when you see all this stuff online, when it seems so crazy, it's probably not a real account. It's probably a bot that's set up to try to farm engagement and farm things, and then that way they can sell that stuff off. Um, some of the fastest engagement you can get is to post like, this is crap or this person's a crook or whatever, because then people, our social justice warriors, instantly want to jump on that and give an opinion. Now, there's some power in marketing and doing that, but just know there's a lot of back end reasons why some of that stuff gets posted. So be very careful what you're engaging in. I guess I should say don't be very careful, because then that would help. I don't really run Facebook ads. Maybe I should. I don't know. If they've got, I always thought it was like, how am I going to find people? Like, if I want to find people that are interested in collision repair, I'll go to certain groups. They're probably following the page anyway. So what would I advertise to? I've done some ads where it like just to people that are followers of the page, but I don't know, maybe okay, maybe don't not engage with bots. Maybe that would help me get more views. I don't know. I'm doing okay. Anywhere from 800,000 to a million views a week. I don't think I need to go farm any views. So there's that. Okay. All right. So guerrilla marketing. That led to a discussion on marketing techniques. Now we do have a new C20 group. So but we have a group, maybe six or seven of them now. We just started the new ADAS one last week. So those are virtual training groups in which shops can join and participate in, and they're great because you get to meet with other shops, you get feedback, you have a facilitator that is highly skilled and engaged in that area. I had an interesting Facebook argument. Was it week before last with somebody when we posted the new 20 groups, and there was a picture of all of us up there, and so you had Rachel and you had Tom and you had Jim and Larry and everybody, and somebody was like, these people can't do what they're trying to teach. And I'm like, so Fortune magazine called Rachel one of the top financial planners in the country. Jim was a trainer at PPG. What do you exactly think they can't do that's out there? But we find what I believe are some of the top industry leaders in the country, or top, not industry leaders, the top people of that particular knowledge set in our industry to sort of lead the groups. And we have a new one for marketing, and Tom Zoblin, Stratosphere Media, and Voltonic, that's one of his other products, leads that group and talks. And so we were talking about guerrilla marketing techniques for collision repairers. You just can't financially compete against large insurance companies. You're not even really financially competing against peers in your market because nobody really markets collision repair all that well. There's a few crazy outliers around the country that do well, but for the most part, you're sort of trying to market against either direct DRP funnels, and those typically would be your large national players in a market. And to do that, you really don't have enough money. Like you don't get to throw millions of dollars in an ad campaign in the collision repair industry. So guerrilla marketing is one of those things where you just take advantage of various sort of grassroots things that you can do. Halloween's always a fun one for shops. We have a lot of shops that will have on whatever night the kids are going to go trick or treating. You know, it kind of depends on what night Halloween falls on. They'll open up their businesses and they'll have like a little sort of like fair in the parking lot and then tells, parents to come by. Sort of like churches have done that a lot because we're all scared to go door to door these days because am I going to get razor blades or or whatever in my candy? So we have some shops that do little festivals, but we were having a conversation on how Red Bull came to market. Um, your town will have different opportunities and different things will be important in different towns that aren't important in other towns. And so you've got to figure out what would work in your market. What are some possible opportunities? So Red Bull was coming to market. They were a startup company. They didn't have a ton of money to be able to like, try to argue or try to compete against the, at that time. So one of their first tactics that the firm or the agency had come up with was a littering technique. In other words, they were going to take empty cans and they would place them around different influential venues. So they typically college campuses, they would go and leave empty cans on tables inside like cafeterias. They would put cans in the trash can. They'd sometimes like, let's say frat row had a party on Friday night. They'd go up and down frat row and litter Red Bull cans around so that you just sort of saw it and thought, well, everybody must be drinking this drink. I'm going to try it because I see cans everywhere. And looking back, brilliant, right? You're like, man, that's amazing. I can't imagine what the pitch meeting was like with the agency where you're like, okay, here's the deal. You're going to give us some empty cans. We're going to go throw them out around college campuses on the ground, inside the cafeteria, in the trash cans. And that's how we're going to get people to like it. But they created influencers by creating these um, different areas of where people would see the product after it had been used, so to speak. They did it at trendy bars and nightclubs, but college campuses was one of their biggest venues, so to speak. The perception that they were trying to do was they wanted to create this illusion that this product was in high demand, and the social proof of that was that there was empty cans everywhere, and that everybody must be drinking this, and you must be cool to drink this. And the result was Red Bull. I mean, I think if you go back maybe 20 years, there wasn't a place you went that didn't have a separate Red Bull cooler. Even the bars had little Red Bull coolers back there, so you could order your drinks mixed with Red Bull or whatever. So, I mean, it worked. It was highly popular. Their main thing was there's a couple of things in psychology. Fear of missing out is one of them. Like if you think there's scarcity in something or you think there's status in something, you don't want to miss out on your opportunity, and so that leads people to do things as you think forward throughout the rest of this year, and I think going into next year, we're not anticipating 2026 to be really great at all, contrary to what somebody else in this industry is going around and preaching right now. We're not anticipating 2026 to be great. We're not anticipating a rebound in claims. We're not anticipating new severity where an insurer is going to come and go, you know what, we changed our mind. That $20 reduction in rate, we're just not going to do that anymore. So you're going to have to get real creative on how to market your business, but not spend a lot of money. You can't do $1 million ad buy with a TV station or with bill. You can't do all of that. So you got to figure out ways to be neat or to be different and get attention. And that'll be different for everybody. But think outside the box. And Tom's group is going to be great. One of the things I tasked him with was helping shops understand marketing in today's digital age, like purchasing keywords, setting up your Google business pages, like all the things that, like we got in this business to fix cars. We didn't get into it to be digital marketers. And if you try to hire an agency, it seems like you can't afford it. And it's not wrong. I have some agencies that want to charge people $5,000 a month. So that's a lot, especially when you look at what I'm paying in software right now. So, Tom's group is great, but I just thought as we get toward Halloween, all of the different things are the different opportunities that Halloween brings us to maybe do some guerrilla style marketing campaigns or the horrors. Could I do a could I set up like a haunted house of collision repair? I mean, just all the fun things that, you could do maybe. And then sometimes obviously we got a week. You may not be able to pull that off by the time Halloween night comes around in whatever your town is, but then we can make notes and be ready for next year. So that was very interesting. Let's talk about State Farm's pricing agreement or the select service agreement. Still service first for me. I don't care how many times people try to say it. But so we talked about what's potentially coming, State Farm entering into refinishing agreements. It makes sense now that the contract was out when you're looking at what people were saying several months ago. I had State Farm direct repair managers telling shops they were going to change their paint brands because State Farm wasn't going to pay for warranty paint anymore. And I was thinking, why is a direct repair manager even talking about the brand of paint that a body shop uses? I found that funny. And then I got the language finally. I was like, nope, nope, they're definitely going to that pricing agreement. So, can an insurer cut a national agreement behind the back of the shop and even the jobber? Well, yes, they can, and they proved that when Geico did the deal with Aztec. So all of you that are complaining, anybody that kept doing business with Aztec after that agreement, because we told you a year ago, this was almost a year ago that started, that you were going to have to cut Aztec off. Like there had to be a message sent that this was not acceptable. And too many people kept it. And so insurers watched it and went, well, shit, I'll just go cut my own deals. And then State Farm cuts a deal on scanning and diagnostics. And then nobody complains about that. So nobody quits. Nobody turns in and goes, hey, been great, but I'm jumping off your program because I think you've gone too far. You don't get the right to do all of these things. So here's paragraph E. Pricing agreements. The provider, body shop, acknowledges State Farm may enter into agreements with manufacturers, paint companies, OE parts also, distributors, so they may cut a deal with a national distributor, diagnostic vendors or suppliers of automotive parts, those can be LKQ, OE, or aftermarket. Supplies, that means, yeah, they may get a price on your gloves, on your foams, on your adhesives, on everything, or materials. State Farm will give provider notice of any such agreement. Provider may, at its option, participate with State Farm and such entities in obtaining parts, supplies, or materials for repairs when performing under this agreement, which basically means we're going to cut a deal. You're welcome to use those people and the price that we've negotiated or not, but we ain't going to pay anymore. So provider further agrees that any pricing agreements negotiated by State Farm are in addition to the price offered by the provider to State Farm. So that's the favored nation clauses and some other things, or any discounts you've given. State Farm shall receive the benefit of both the provider's pricing offer under 4B, 4C, and 4D, and or discounted negotiated through the pricing agreement, which means we get to pick and choose whatever discount we want, and whichever discount is the greatest one is the one we're going to take. So if you offered us one, awesome. If the one we negotiate behind your back is better, awesome. That's the one we're going to go with. If the provider chooses not to participate with State Farm and such entities, the prices charged by the provider may not exceed the price that State Farm would have paid had you used the provider. Okay, you now have a very, very low ceiling and you have no floor. That's what a DRP agreement does. And everybody's like, Kristen, why are you so anti-DRP? Because this crap was always coming down the track. This isn't new. We looked at this about over 20 something years ago. We tried it with an OE on OE parts. The damn test in a particular market worked. And the only reason that didn't roll out is because there was a couple of gentlemen within the organization that said it's not fair to shops. Shops need profit on X to stay in business, and we can't do it. Those gentlemen left that company over 10 years ago. And here's where we are. There is no one left inside the corporate operations of an insurance company that is going, I wonder if this is good for shops. Because in their mind, there will always be somebody willing to do it for nothing so they can just keep pushing the rates and the payments and everything down as far as it can go. They will continue to market suppress until you guys cry uncle and get off the program. And it's not going to be good for the MSOs because some of our MSOs, the only thing that's made you competitive over the last X number of years was that you had gone directly to manufacturers and negotiated your own discounts. And so that gave you sort of a market unfair competitive advantage. You could look at some place and go, you know what? We're not necessarily getting paid what I think we should get paid, but because we have such good over here, some of these MSO agreements are 70% or a little bit more off of list. The rest of us over here, if we get 35 or 40% off list, we feel pretty good. And I've got these MSOs that were getting 70% off. So that was an unfair competitive advantage that they had in the market. Now you've got an agreement that says we get the best of whatever. So if you've negotiated a huge discount, we get that. If you haven't, then you get the one that we're at. We're not going to no longer pay you list pricing on anything. Now, folks, this isn't just going to be your paint. This isn't just going to be like your adhesives. They're going to put this to you on parts. So they're going to come back and go, we've negotiated a deal with Honda or Toyota or whatever, and this is what parts are. And so every shop, you thought it was bad that you weren't getting your labor rates. You thought it was bad that you weren't getting all of the extra line items on an estimate that you needed. They're about to take your part profit and your paint material profit away from you. They're going to take it all away. It just won't be whatever healthy margins you've worked for all this time. And it's going to get worse. What you continue to allow will only get worse. It will never get better. And here we are in 2025 having a conversation that no one thought would happen. I can remember 16, 17, 18 years ago, we had put some language in the select service first agreement at the time that sort of mentioned paint, and everybody sort of lost their mind, and we were like, we have no intentions of getting into the painting business. And it really was because back then, we didn't have the vending agreements, we didn't have the national distribution thing that we wanted, and now we have this thing called an Amazon. So I don't need a footprint of distributors across the country, even though now with consolidation, I do have national jobbers. I have big jobbers that cover a majority of the country. When 10, 15 years ago, I had all of these little jobbers and all of this little, different providers. The consolidation within the industry has made this stuff work. Now, how does this work for the rest of you? So a lot of people are going, that's why I'm not on a DRP. See, I'm super smart. I'm not on a DRP for anybody. All of you that are not on a DRP, you have been held subjugated to the pricings agreed in these damn ADAS calibration agreements. So you're writing your estimates and you're getting your quotes and doing whatever, and you're getting some insurance company writing you back and going, oh, we have an agreement with Elite Tech or Aztec or whatever that we only pay this for a level 2 calibration. So you've been suffering from that. All of you ADAS companies, some of you went to insurers and you tried to get deals, and the only thing that you're really mad about is that you did not either A, get the deal, or it's not an exclusive deal. So you're not getting all the volume you thought you were going to get. But it's hurting those businesses as well. If you think it's hard to put product in a van and deliver it to a body shop, whether that's paint, sandpaper, or whatever, when they're getting 70% off and you got to pay gas and insurance and all that stuff to deliver product, how do you put a quality trained technician? Because think about my delivery drivers, right? They just sort of have to have a clean driving record. That's really, and I'm going to pay them $14 to $25 an hour. When you're talking about a qualified and trained ADAS technician that gets in a van full of tools, scan tools, and targets and drives around, how am I going to do that for like 70% off? So we're headed for for some very interesting times. Make no mistake, we are headed for the times we are because body shops sort of did this to themselves. Um, you agreed to too many discounts. You took too many things, little things as they would happen, and you go, okay, well that's terrible, but I'll figure out a way to deal with it. Okay, that's terrible, but I'll figure out a way to deal with it. And now you're at a point where if all of this rolls out in the first of 2026, I don't know how probably 80% of this industry stays open. And that's not just body shops. That'll be jobbers. That'll be vendors. That'll be all of the supportive services around body shops, dealership parts departments. Like, if an OE is going to fulfill orders directly, what does that do to dealers? So as we've watched, sort of the dealers association and the OEs, so NADA and the dealers sort of duke it out over, do I have to have a dealership to be able to sell a car? There's a lot at stake there that's not just being able to sell a car. All right, let's talk about what's at stake in Iowa. This isn't a new discussion in Iowa. There was a case in 2020, and we'll talk about that one a little bit later. But the Department of Insurance in Iowa is making a big deal out of this. That they arrested and charged a man who worked for a roofing company for basically public adjusting without a license. Now, what's really scary. It sounds well, if you're going to be a public, when we think public adjuster, we think homeowners, and this is a roofing company. Well, if you're going to act as a public adjuster, then you should have a license, Kristen. So why are we mad that this guy was arrested and charged? He did try to appeal it. His law firm on freedom of speech, which is, I think a lot of us that gets everybody caught up here every now and then. But if you're acting as a public adjuster without a license, why are you a little worried? Because you need to really read the details of what this guy did and what the state said, and then we'll go back to a 2020 verdict on it as well. So, the Iowa Division of Insurance Fraud through the DOI arrested this gentleman, Harrison, who's the general manager of R3 Roofing and Exteriors, because he engaged in the practice of public adjusting without a license. Now, what did that mean? Okay. He negotiated an insurance claim for a client from which he and his company could benefit. The gentleman was arrested, booked into jail, and there is his booking photo. Now, Iowa law restricts a contractor completing the repairs from acting as a public adjuster. All right. So a lot of people go, well, person, this law really only applies in the homeowners division. It doesn't. If you want to get really ticky, unless the state regulation defines contractor as someone engaged in homeowners repairs, body shops, you technically are a contractor. In other words, you bring a vehicle in and then you may engage different parties. So if we think about a contractor, a person that's like working on houses, I may get a roofer and a drywaller and a plumber and a whatever, and you guys get a glass guy, and then you get an ADAS guy, and then you get a dealership. And so you're acting and engaging and acting like a contractor. So this customer selects this roofing company to put a roof on their house. Now, typically, people say that, well, they're only doing this because it was hail season. And Kristen, when hail season happens, all these people come out of the woodwork, whether it's PDR vendors and whether it's roofers. Customer says, yep, we're going to hire you to put a roof on. The roofer says, well, we work with all insurance companies and we'll happily we'll meet your adjuster out at your house and we'll climb the roof with them and we'll show them your damage and we're going to do everything to get your roof replaced. Doesn't that sound like what body shops do every day? I can tell you how many Facebook pages, websites, radio ads, everything that I listen to that says, we work with all insurers. We'll make sure you get paid. We fight for you. We do all of these things. And then a customer brings you a car, and then what do? You guys write a supplement, you send it to the insurance company, and you and this adjuster go back and forth on what you think the customer is owed to repair the vehicle. Same thing this gentleman was doing as a contractor on a roofing claim. He was working back and forth with the insurance company and saying, this customer needs a roof. So, in the process of trying to advocate for a customer, he is arrested and charged with a felony of not having his public adjusting license. Now, if we go and look at that particular state a little bit further, this was a 2020 case. It was 33 Carpenters Construction versus State Farm. I want you to kind of read what the court says, because this is what sort of Wyoming had a really interesting bill that Geico had sent me several years ago about we had a shop in the market that was wanting to repair his car correctly. Geico wasn't really happy with that shop. So they sent me a copy of a law on the books in Wyoming that really spoke to, you can't send in supplements. That's practicing law without a license or acting as a public adjuster. In states that they don't have public adjuster's license, they'll call it practicing law without a license. And I went, well, cute. I think this is great. but what are we going to do with how we're going to revamp all of your claims handling? Because your entire claim system is built on body shop sending supplements to insurance companies. But if it's against the law, we have a lot of work to do, boo boo, like what we're going to do. But so here's this one in Iowa. It went through the state Supreme Court, got a ruling that came back down. It upheld the verdict against this contractor. And it basically says that 33 Carpenters was acting as an unlicensed public adjuster, Iowa code, and it gives the code, will void any contracts that are entered. So for some of us, if we think about the contracts that we have customers sign, and we've been going back and forth over the last several years going, hey, it can't be a direction to pay and an authorization to repair. You've got to have a services agreement because that service agreement really not only protects you, protects the customer. Um, you have some insurers that try to get a little sneaky and go, well, if we come in and say that you were unauthorized practice of public adjusting or practice of law, then the contract itself is void. And that contract is generally what protects shops when it comes to total losses, salvage, abandonment, etc. Um, void declares void contracts entered to by residential contractors who perform public adjusting services without a proper license. Iowa Code Section X states that a person is a public adjuster. So what does it mean? When acting for or aiding an insured in negotiating for or affecting the settlement of a first party claim for loss or damage to real or personal property of the insured. So, personal property would be their vehicle. So, if you are acting or aiding a policyholder in negotiating a settlement, which that's what a supplement is, you're basically saying your first offer to pay for this claim was not enough. Therefore, we want more money. You wrote 3,000, I wrote 15,000 to fix this. Like that's exactly what contractors do as well. Insurer says, no, you don't need a roof, or you only need one slope, or whatever. In concluding that 33 carpenters acted as an unlicensed public adjuster, the Supreme Court looked at both their conduct during the claim as well as its representations on their website, social media, etc. And the court found that 33 carpenters' activities demonstrated that it was acting for and aiding the insureds in effecting a settlement of their claim with the insurer without having a license. And so specifically, I want you, if you're not on, if you're on the audio version, I really want you to go look at the video version because I want you to see this and what the court said. The court said such conduct was consistent with its representations on its website and social media, which provided, and in quotes, we meet personally with your insurance adjuster as an advocate on your behalf and discuss the work that needs to be completed to repair your home to its original beauty and value, end quote. That was the language that the Supreme Court of the state of Iowa said held that this particular contractor was actively involved in being a public adjuster without a license. How many shops and people across Iowa and all over the country, you think it's a badge of honor to have the we work for you, we're fight for you, we're going to do everything to make sure you get OE parts and OE repair procedures and all of that stuff. That's the exact language. So when I tell people, I don't necessarily tell people, we'll work for you, your insurance company's terrible, we're going to be, one, it's just a negative right off the bat. In the world of negotiating, that's a bad way to start. You think it sounds good. You want people to go, yeah, we're on your side, right? But that's not really how the human brain works. So you already started to build barriers between you and the customer and getting any sort of resolution. But here is a court case from 2020 basically saying by having that language on the website, by using it in social media posts, whether it's on your website, whether you put it in Facebook, whether you put it in a TikTok video. I see so many shops making TikTok videos that we represent you and we fight for you and we do all that. And I'm thinking, shut up, like stop saying those things. This is an example. I know, and I've reached out to Iowa's DOI. I'm pretty 100% sure they are not going to respond to me because I want an explanation. My specific request to them was, how is what this gentleman did any different than what body shops do when it comes to how supplements are handled and negotiated back and forth on the repair? And then how, if that's wrong, then why do we allow DRP in which it specifically has the insurer only dealing with that repair and going back and forth on whatever. The auto claims system and even the homeowners claim system doesn't work without direct communication between the repairer and insurer. Like if we went back to the old ways where the customers brought the bills in and went pay me, you would have to have such an incredible staff of people that there would be no money on the insurance side, right? So the current system doesn't work unless adjusters and body shops are allowed to talk to each other. But make no mistake, if they get mad at you, then they will pull this stuff out and try to use it. So there's a lot of if you're in specifically in Iowa right now, there's some conversations that you need to be having with your business attorney, body shops, even the DRPs. There's some conversations you need to be having. If a consumer got mad at you, so everybody thinks that a lot of this is just, well, an insurer got mad, and I get it. Like we had a hailstorm here a couple years ago, and even to this day, roofers will knock on my door and go, "Hey, we can get you a new roof." And I go, "The hell you can." There's the door. But it just takes a consumer to get mad and know this and say, "Hey, I think my contract's void because they did all of these things and they were advocating or doing whatever." Um, do we just suddenly, I mean, I have some shops across the country that are like, I don't do supplement portals, I don't send anything in, here's the estimate, the customer can submit it to the to insurer if they want to, I'll answer questions if I'm called. But I have some shops that are very hands off in the whole claims process now, and that's dealing back and forth with insurance companies because you have no legal obligation as a shop to deal with the insurance company. They're not your customer. um, if the policyholder wants to use something else to help pay their financial duty. So in other words, the owner of the vehicles who owes you the money, if they want to ask a third party to kick in some funds, that's their choice, right? They could technically bring you the car and you could get it repaired, and an insurance company could never know. Um, but there may be some conversations that need to be had, and I may make an insurer acknowledge back to me in an email that they agree that talking to me is not in violation of this, and that they're asking for my assistance in order to make the claim go better or whatever. I don't know. I think they really overstepped with this one. I have also contacted the attorney that is representing the gentleman recently to ask their opinion on, has the insurance company's previous, you want to deal with the contractor when it's to your benefit. You don't want to deal with them when you think it's not. So you think these roofing companies coming in during a hailstorm are bad for you. So now you want to say use the law, but you've never wanted to do that for the other 20 years or so that all this stuff has been going on. So I've asked that attorney what they think. I don't know if I'll get a response from them either, but I'm very curious. In Wyoming, it went away. Geico just went away because they were like, yeah, we probably set a precedent that we don't really care. So we don't like this shop, but we can't use something to hammer that shop that then isn't going to affect everybody else in the market. So it'll be interesting to watch. All right, let's talk about negative supplements. It's nothing new. They've been around in the industry for a while. It seems to be picking up. They mostly amuse me because they seem to be happening to DRPs more and more than before. Uh, but you get an estimate, you work on it, you send up some sort of like final little bits for, so you can get the car delivered. And then it's almost like whatever adjuster at that point pulls it and sort of starts all over. They've decided they don't owe you things. This one was nice. I saw this one get posted because they said that they had reviewed the estimate with 8 of their other colleagues, and they did not agree with what the other employee had previously approved. And that they told us that they cannot make us take it off the estimate as it was several weeks ago, but they are going to fail the file, which is really going to hurt our numbers. They said, of course, they will pay the claim as it had been several weeks, but we are going to see less work from them in return. I thought, wow. Well, I hope you got that one recorded because that would be a conversation I would love to have and to listen to. But negative supplements sort of are trending up, and they're sort of everywhere. And then what do you do for that? There's a principle called estoppel. And basically when an insurer makes a statement or does something, and then people rely or act on the word of that statement, an insurer can't change their mind. And what this is bringing up to me is that most of the people in claims don't have claims training. They just are sort of processors. They're told to pull out this thing out and pay it. And the eight colleagues isn't probably a manager. It's eight of them in a cubicle environment somewhere that got together over looking over someone's shoulder and went, yeah, yeah, yeah. I wouldn't do that either. And then sort of like Lord of the Flies mentality kicks in and they start looking for other things they should take off the estimate. And it's like, damn, guys, calm down. Um, but because they don't have claims training, I firmly believe, been talking about this for a couple of years, that if you're going to be in the body shop business, the front office, you need to have claims training. You kind of have to think like an adjuster or a competent adjuster, and help sort of navigate this. Like you're not trying to act as a public adjuster. There's just some things you need to understand so that you can set up your file properly to not get caught in this problem. So we have a claim school class you can take. We have a basic course for $75. It's just legal concepts and doctrine, where we just sort of explain some of the basic principles of law in general, and then claims law that if you've never heard these terms or words like estoppel, then it's a great way to sort of get yourself ready. Now, the big thing with estoppel is that you must have acted on that word and that it caused a financial detriment. So, in other words, when I get a supplement back from an insurer and it says this is what we're going to pay, I don't go, okay, and keep working. There's a stopping point in which that is sent to the customer and says, Ms. Smith, please see the latest communication from your insurer. They have indicated this. How would you like me to proceed? And then typically the insurer will say, or the insured will say, well, fix my car, right? That's pretty simple. Great. In other words, the customer now owes me money because they've told me to work based on the word of that adjuster, the estimate. To go back and change your mind, being part types, I've seen them so much now, or on a supplement, they rerun and go, oh, well, we found a bunch of used parts or whatever. So we changed all the part types. That I see that a lot. Like if I can have a definitive line in which the customer, I can show the customer was aware, the customer instructed me to do my job, which meant now you contractually owe me what I incurred, which buying those parts or doing that labor or doing all those things, then you could potentially make an estoppel argument. So we're not trying to turn you guys into attorneys. We're not even really trying to turn you into adjusters. I just think sometimes when you understand sort of this bigger picture that surrounds this vehicle that's in your body shop, it helps you better with the conversations you have with insurers or customers. It helps you better with the documentation you write, and you really understand why we have written documentation with everything. Like, I don't want a phone call to ever take place that is not followed up by an email. You understand those things. So this class is great. It's $75. Holly put this together. If you've met Holly on our team, she had over 20 years of claims experience. Hers was with Allstate. And she won their Distinguished Performance Award twice. Most people don't ever win it once. She won it twice. So really, really, really good adjuster. Just really good. Like we just don't have a lot of really good adjusters in the old days. But so she put this class together. It's a 10-part course. It's video. You can sit down and go through all of it. You also keep it when it's over, so you can go back and replay it, or you can show it to new hires when people come to work for you. You own it after that. It's all yours. She did a really good job with it. All right. Speaking of the economy, we're just going to dig this down a little bit deeper. A lot of articles started popping off at the end of the third quarter and now into the fourth over sort of this collapse of the trucking industry that's happening. Um, and is the trucking industry our Waffle House? So I kind of joke in the world of catastrophes and how bad is the weather somewhere. Waffle House is sort of the standard. Waffle House has, private generators and does all this stuff. They have their own storm team in Atlanta. It's pretty amazing. So Google Waffle House storm team and you'll love it. But FEMA really does watch the Waffle House to determine how bad certain areas are. And so is the trucking industry maybe our version of a catastrophe warning sign? So our version of the Waffle House. So here's what happened. They had a huge driver shortage at one point a couple of years ago. They kept saying they were about probably 500,000 drivers short across the United States. Now, whether that's led to some of our latest news about maybe illegal immigrants being in trucking, I don't know. But they had a shortage. Well, that sort of sounds like our industry, right? For the last 10 years, everybody's been screaming that we have this technician shortage. And when you have an actual real labor shortage, it drives up the cost of doing that thing, that collision repair, right? I got to pay people more money to do the job. It costs more money to do the job because of the shortage. And so they had this. Well, within the last year, that sort of downturn turned into a shortage of people because we just didn't have the work. In other words, there wasn't enough. Trucking jobs out there. So then it turned out I really didn't need those people after all. God, does that sound like the collision repair industry, right? Everybody was screaming that we were going to have a technician shortage, and now we have shops closing. We have claim count down. We have shops letting technicians go where they don't need to keep that many. And so there's not enough work. We don't really have the shortage. They have historically low margins in that industry. Man, does that sound like the collision repair industry? Um, and then what that tends to do is because the margins are so low, when there's any sort of destabilization in the market or a change in availability, um, they cannibalize themselves. In other words, they start discounting things like, basically, I need the work, I got to keep my truckers busy, I got to do all this. And then they churn it till it fails. Oh my God, does that sound like the collision repair industry? So, sort of a record wave of trucking companies over the last month have begun to file Chapter 11. We lost 300 and something shops that I was aware of last year in our industry, and we've lost more this year. Shops just closing their doors, putting their buildings up for sale, and just kind of calling it quits. Um, and I think if we watch the parity between collision repair and the trucking industry and sort of what's happened to it, it's an indicator of what may be coming for us in 2026. So every economist person I talk to that sort of does projections, when they look at our industry, go, yeah, no, like next year's going to really suck, Kristen. I'm like, great, because this year was so much sunshine and roses. I really can't wait for 2026. Like, what's that meme where, oh, that's not a meme, it's a cartoon. Emperor's New Groove, where they're going down the river and they're tied to the post and it's like sharp rocks, waterfall ahead, and he's like, yep, bring it. Right? Like, what else? I mean, I feel like after we've gotten through 2025, what else could possibly go wrong? But then probably shouldn't say that either because I might surprise at what could go wrong. Speaking of going wrong, layoffs and bankruptcy, Rivian announced last week more layoffs. They're going to lay off approximately 600 employees. It's about 4.5% of their workforce. Most of those layoffs are in customer service type functions, and then in marketing. So I always say marketing and training. Those are the two things that always take the hit the first. But what was interesting is that the day before the layoffs were announced, the CEO was doing interviews because they've rolled out sort of a secondary company that's making an electric bicycle, and said that they were approaching a very critical moment in their company. You saw General Motors said they were writing off what 1.6 billion in EV loss, and that they were going to change manufacturing. You have a lot of companies not going to manufacturing or not going to EV manufacturing. Consumer confidence and market demand has just changed on that. Whether you want to blame it on the loss of the federal credits that are out there, or just sort of this nostalgia, as people start to think about traditional America and good American values and whatever, as we have this cycle, the EV and this EV infrastructure and all that sort of became a target during elections, and people used it. And so now you have people not necessarily wanting all of those EVs. How that will affect Rivian, I don't know. How that will affect body shops that have made significant investments in wanting to be EV collision repair centers. If more and more OEs are pulling back on their EV production, um, will we need that? I definitely don't believe that there'll be some specialization. There's been some people preaching in our industry that, oh, you got to specialize in something. I don't think we have enough volume to specialize in anything. We probably need to be, able to sort of take a wide variety of vehicles and types and makes and models and all that stuff in, just because there's just not enough claim volume out there to be a specialist in, and just sort of limit what you're doing there. Now, I want to talk about a funny one. Um, I get a chance to read a lot of legal filings and talk to a lot of attorneys and all of those things. We had last week a shop had three court cases, had previously won all those, and then the insurer appealed the verdicts, and so there was an appeals hearing, and that generated some really um, interesting content. So I'm going to play you guys this video because I thought it was just really funny. Because I run into ChatGPT all the time. Particularly, I have adjusters that I can tell the email they've sent to the shop is ChatGPT, and I can tell sometimes the shop sends an email back as ChatGPT. And folks, artificial intelligence has got a lot of problems that's in there right now on accuracy and understanding and a lot of things. And so I'm going to play you this video because I liked it.
GPT really needs to stop making up legal stuff. It's getting ridiculous, so consider this a heads up for anyone trying to use it for law things.
So sometimes we play around with it for our video topics to see what it'll say. We recently made a video about concealing your license plate using some kind of spray to avoid red light cameras. And we wanted to see what Chat would say about the legal consequences of a company selling this kind of product. And lo and behold, Chat gave us some real world precedent about the FTC going after a company that apparently sold an identical product.
Awesome. Only it wasn't awesome at all, because after some quick research, it became clear that this case doesn't exist, which Chat eventually admitted.
But we gave it another try, and we told it to stop making stuff up. And this time it gave us this, quote, real example of a state attorney general issuing an injunction against a similar company. Only that was completely made up too.
Okay, so maybe Chat just sucks with this particular area of research. So we asked it a question about ICE enforcement, specifically if ICE can arrest someone on their own front lawn without a warrant. And it gave us this case, which seemed particularly on point. Only we couldn't find the actual case.
So we asked it to confirm that it was actually real, and it doubled down and assured us that it was. But we still couldn't find it. So we asked Chat to find it itself, and it said, no problem, good sir. Here are even some links for the case for you to use and see for yourself. Only one link didn't work at all, and the other sent us to a completely unrelated case.
So overall, we found that Chat is pretty good at some basic legal tasks, like spitting out a template NDA, or reviewing your rental agreement contract and spotting issues for you. But for now, at least, it still hallucinates way too much when it comes to any kind of nuanced legal research.
It's pretty clear that what it's trying to do is people please, even if that means giving you fake cases to answer your question in the way that you want it to be answered. But it doesn't realize that this people pleasing can quickly go awry when you're sanctioned by the court because everything it's saying is fake.
All right, so we've ran into this a lot, and some federal districts have had to issue statements that says it doesn't allow ChatGPT to be used in either court report, submitted reports to the court, briefings, etc. And then I see now that a lot of people are using ChatGPT and AI. We talked previously about what MIT said about AI makes you stupid, which means you as a human being have to have a grasp of the content of which you are using that particular AI tool to assist you with. Is it an assistant? It is not a replacement for anything at this point. The people-pleasing thing is true. It sort of picks up on the tone of whatever your inquiry is, so whatever you're typing in, and then it tends to want to feed you up support of what you want to say. Now, if we go back to debate, if anybody ever took debate in high school or college or whatever, you would get the pro or the con of an argument. And your ability to be an effective debater meant you needed to understand the pro and the con. And then you needed to pick or arrange your side to have the best points for whatever point or particular stance you wanted to make. And so you knew you were cultivating your data or your supporting documentation to tell your story, but you only could do that if you knew the other side of the story. What we have now is people that just want to pick up their phone and go, hey, Google, tell me blah, blah, blah. And because you don't have an understanding of it, you're doing bad things. Well, now it's in law firms. So in this case, I thought this was really funny. This is the appeal verdict that was not in favor of the insurance company on this one. And what it was they had used, you could tell, they had used artificial intelligence to write their appeal brief. And it so angered and frustrated the judge, he sort of chastises them a little bit. So this was a case where you had an insurer that wanted to basically say that the body shop was a storage facility. A lot of states have laws on storage facilities and the limitations of what they can charge. Body shops are not storage facilities. That is not the purpose of our business. We are not a towing and storage facility. So a lot of people will read state statutes on towing and storage facilities, and then try to tell body shops that that's all they can charge. That may sound familiar to you. So these three cases, this one in particular insurer was very proud of their young associate, and thought, slam dunk, we're going to sue these body shops. We're going to go after them and set a precedent. It didn't go well. So basically, the plaintiff, which was the insurance company, because they sued the shop, argues that blank is a storage facility, and as such, the statute applies to it. Apparently, it believes just because it stored the vehicle waiting for the insurance company to pick it up, and the vehicle company, after the insurance company determined it was a total loss, then it must be a storage facility as defined by the statute, which was what ChatGPT's reasoning was, for what they had filed. Now, anytime you have a judge in their ruling right, let's look at the definition. He's open class because he's mad. Storage facility means any place to which a for hire motor carrier delivers a towed motor vehicle. I'll put this back up for you guys because some of you may, if you're facing similar assertions by an insurance company, this may be really good for you to grab and send to them. It basically says, means a place for which a for hire motor carrier delivers a towed motor vehicle for storage. Plaintiff's complaint. So, in what the plaintiff originally, their complaint appeal, what they originally sent the court, acknowledges that blank is a collision center. So, if you've ever read the first part of a filing or a briefing, they always want to set these sort of like the ground rules. We are an insurance company licensed to apply, to sell insurance in the state of Iowa. Blank blank is a collision repair center in which they perform collision repairs at this address or whatever. So he's basically going, in your own complaint, you said they were a collision center, not a storage facility. Pursuant to the statutory definition, paragraph 5 of the plaintiff's complaint states that on or about September 3rd, 2024, our customer's vehicle was towed to blank body shop for repairs. Emphasis added in parentheses. I'm thinking, this judge is mad. I can tell you that the filing is terrible. Like, you can really tell that it was not a human that wrote it, that it was definitely like something you enter some search parameters of, what you think. And then, like the video says, it's going to give you what it thinks you want. It's a people pleaser. And then it was all wrong. So emphasis added. Plaintiff acknowledges that the vehicle in question was towed to blank for repairs, not storage. Now he's going to bring out the Webster's dictionary. It gets really bad. Webster's Ninth New Collegiate Dictionary defined facility as something, in parentheses, as a hospital, that is built, installed, or established to serve a particular purpose. Here, blank, the name of the body shop, particular purpose appears to be a body shop for collision repair, not storage. The state legislature apparently had this in mind when it limited storage facility to a particular purpose, namely storage of towed motor vehicles. So in his writing this response, you can see his frustration. You can see how angry he is. ChatGPT is not very good for law. So if you're using it to try to tell you this statute says this and you shouldn't owe it or whatever, it is historically flawed. If you rely on it to add in the operation of your business or in claims, because I have all these adjusters lately that are copy and pasting ChatGPT shit and sending it back, which I think is lovely. The art of war, never interrupt your enemy when they make a mistake. I tell shops, shh, let them keep writing. It's awesome. Just let them keep going. You're going to have some mistakes. But now keep in mind the total reliance on any artificial intelligence. This industry has so many different nuances and zigs and zags. There will never be artificial intelligence that can do it all. This is a people business. There can be artificial intelligence that can enhance with human involvement and make things faster, better, smarter, whatever, but you have to pair it with a human. There is no artificial estimating coming to save you. There is no artificial research of OE repair procedures that is coming to save you. There's not ChatGPT attorneys that are coming to save you. You really do have to have a knowledge. We can't just skip over, fire all these people. We don't need them. We're going to reduce cost and we're going to use this piece of software. So be very, very careful. We can't staff body shops. There's just not enough profit. There's not enough meat on the bone to have as many admin people as we have historically had. Shops are going to have to be searching for answers and resolutions for that. But AI is not the circus, not the monkey on that one. All right, let's wrap this up talking about a couple of new things. This one I found interesting. This is critical thinking. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of real journalism in this industry because there are influences, like we talked about sooner or earlier, that people need advertising dollars, right? A magazine can't produce even digitally without some sort of money there, and that has to come in the form of advertising. So this week or last week, you saw Repair Driven News basically repeat a press release that General Motors had put out. That's just raving about double-digit revenue growth from OnStar and some other things. And it sounds great. And the reason that they put this out is because, so many OEs are asking body shops to keep and continue to be certified because they keep promising them all of these benefits that are going to come from subscription-based services. But then we got to dig a little deeper. So if you saw GM stating that they were going, at the same time that this comes out, they're going to eliminate Apple CarPlay and Android Auto from all of their vehicles because really, most people, all you want out of your interface is you want to be able to listen to your own music and you want to be able to have mapping systems and all of that available. SiriusXM continues to report that their subscriptions are declining at a sort of a rapid rate. They are finding a little bit of market stabilization with podcasts now. There's things people want to listen to, but for the most part, I think people will figure out. I'll find it if that podcast becomes one I have to pay for. I'll just find a different one that I don't have to pay for because we're in an economy slump. Um, so if we look at this, if we just look at what GM sent us in a press release, it sounds great. It sounds wonderful. But um, earlier this year, S&P Global did a study and asked consumers, what do you think of all of this subscription-based features on cars and where is it going? And they even say, hey, previously consumers were more open to this, but now in our recent 2025 edition, consumer sentiment toward paid connected services, which were meant to be gold mines for automakers. So think about it. These automakers are like, we're going to make billions of dollars just on reoccurring monthly revenue, and we don't have to sell a car. So I get X amount of money to build and sell a car. I'll get revenue after the sale on this vehicle. GM pushes their Super Cruise, but you get 3 years of that before a lot of this before you have to start paying for it. So sometimes when they say they have this number of subscribers, that's not necessarily real. We don't know how many people are still under the free, and then how many people will continue that once they actually have to start paying for it. But it took a significant turn over the past year. And bottom line, people just don't want to pay for, you've paid. I saw another story come out last week that for the first time, the average purchase price of vehicles at 50,000 or greater. You got to pay 50,000 for something, and then they want you to pay extra to be able to use the seats or the radios or whatever. Okay, here's the deal. For those of you that were old enough to remember the 80s and the 90s, and some of you even more, but for me, the 80s and the 90s, that was when I was building mini trucks. Ryan and I always joke, the West Coast Customs, he was first mini truck. He was building mini trucks in the 80s and took an old brown B, those little B Nissan trucks and cut the roof off of it. And that was one of his first. He got a $5,000 loan from his grandparents to do that. And, we were making mini trucks. And so here's some things we could do. We could rip out a dash pretty quickly and put in a new stereo. And we could build speaker boxes and we could do all of that. So if you look at the features that the consumer really wants, there's already a market of aftermarket products out there that will allow you to have those services in your car and not have to have the subscription services. I think this is going to be a big mistake the OEs are going to find, particularly as the economy, people aren't going to pay $25 a month for things they don't have to. And that's going to include, I have friends that have Netflix and they have YouTube TV and they have all these like different streaming services. And they're already like, hey, I'm going to cut down to one this year. Netflix has raised their prices too much. And so people are now not having multiple streaming services. So I think it's going to be interesting to watch where that goes. That pot of gold that every OE seems to be counting on, I'm not so sure the consumer is going to let that happen. We may be back to aftermarket installations. So that, I guess maybe that may save SEMA, right? We've had over the couple of years that just the whole custom market isn't what it was before because of the way that the cars are electronic and everything interfaces. There's not a, I mean, I literally, if I change the wheels and tires, I may affect the ADAS system. So, um, maybe the OEs are going to help us and have the custom market come back, and we'll all be doing stereos and all that stuff again, like we were in the 80s and 90s. So many of our ADAS companies now. I think Elite Tech's one of them. I know ProTech is one of them as well. The founders of those started in the 80s and 90s doing stereos. I mean, that was like that's how they got in the industry. So maybe there's a return to that. I just thought that was interesting. Before I pay $30 a month to be able to have my phone play through my car, I will figure out a way around that. You better. It may be like my boat. I just may have a big Bluetooth speaker somewhere inside my car, but I'm not paying $25 a month for Android Auto. It's not. I'm anti iPhone, but I'm not doing that. All right. That's it for this week. This was a fun one for me because it was like, there's not industry stuff. I just want to talk about the stuff that's been bothering me lately. I will have a full, next Monday morning, I will have sort of a full industry news and SEMA thing. There's some really cool things that are going to be happening at SEMA. So if you're going to be there, I'll give you some tips and some tricks on some things you need to go see and not do. I will not be there, mostly because there's not a lot of people there I want to see. So there's that. There's the people I do want to see. I know I really wouldn't get to hang out with them because they're going to be doing other things as well. And so no fun happens at SEMA. It's really a drain on the business thing. But I will have a couple of camera people out there working and doing some different things. So if you see them running around, Melanie will be there. She is the smartest person at Collision Hub. So if you see Melanie running around, stop her and say hi, yell at her. It's fine. I won't be there. So, just don't make her quit. Just don't do that. Like, kind of need her. Kind of need Avery too. Avery will be there too. But they'll be running around. But I got some things I want to share with you. So I will see you guys next Monday morning on Collision Coffee Talk. Woo-hoo, I need to go get another cup. Have a fantastic Monday, everybody.